I'm so thrilled to be here this morning, and when I pulled up, it was one of those Monday mornings where I pull up and I'm like, is this the right hotel? And I look in the parking lot and I see 3 or 4 people I recognize, and I said, I've got to be in the right place. I am so happy to be here. I was here last year at the onset of the transition of our adult education and literacy program, and it seems like it was like 6 weeks ago. And today I really want to talk about how we are positioned and really share with you a focus on preparing and invigorating for what we have in store for us in the future, which is exciting, adventurous, and it's going to ask us to really contribute new and innovative ideas and a lot of our heart into the services we provide to students. And I want to do a little reflection on the past also. So I'm happy to be here this morning, and I look forward to the conference. The agenda is outrageously packed with really high quality stuff. I've been involved in the volunteer effort for many, many years and seen different permutations of this conference over the years. And every year it's kind of like a computer, you know, every 6 months, 8 months, 18 months, whatever it happens to be, the memory increases and the speed increases and the quality increases. And that's what we see here with Literacy Texas. Our commissioners are very focused in expanding the reach into our volunteer and nonprofit sectors. Historically, as many of you know, the workforce program or the education program funded the volunteer efforts at about $100,000. Last year we funded, as Jennifer was referencing, $250,000 toward supporting volunteer programs. And on the 21st of August, the commissioners are going to vote for another $250,000, I'm almost certain, for next year. So we see expansion and increase in investments because you matter, and the lives you touch and the quality you provide is impressive and worthy of great investments. And one thing I do want to tell everybody today is I'm the person to talk to if you want to really share with what's happening in your local communities and how we can help you do better. We are at the commission, my job is really to be a communicator of what's happening locally, and I'm only as good as what you tell me. And many of you send me emails, you text me, you tell me on the hallway out a minute ago I was talking to folks, and that helps because I communicate right to our leadership, and it's my stewardship, my role to really communicate what is needed out there from you to the field, and to get funding out there and to get support out there. So I thank you for your efforts. Many of you are great communicators to us. Don't stop. So I started this story earlier this year, and it's about change. And we've got quite an adventure and quite a challenge ahead of us, and lots of excitement. And I know you're going to join me in that. And the question no longer is if things are changing, but how are they going to change? And when are they going to be changing? And who's going to be involved in that change? And I know all of you are already involved and have been doing wonderful things to see and herald in quite a transformation we have of the literacy and adult education field. I'm on a mission, and I think that we all are interested in how we can deliberately and thoughtfully create together, working together, a new definition and a transformative culture for student success. We have so much value to bring to our communities, and our students come to us, come to the tutors in this room, come to the directors that support those programs, and they have gone through or are experiencing big change in their lives. And we are change agents, and you deliver every day a wonderful service, spending late hours, weekends, sitting there working with adult learners. And you understand change, and you see it every day in the lives of the students you work with. And that means you're also great learners of change, and we have a lot of change in store for us. And it makes me feel, my leadership asked me, like, how will the field address changes? How prepared are they? And I said, that's all we do. That's what we do every day, is work with adult learners who are going through change. So I feel very confident, and I'm real excited to share with you what the future looks like and to reflect on the past year that we've had also. So I call it the next wave, our call to action. And every time I talk about this, it changes. It changed last night. It changed in the parking lot when I got here at 7:45 and I put in 16 new slides that I thought would be useful that I had left out. Think of it like a wave. Some of you are riding that wave like a pro. Some of you might feel submerged in that wave. You might be running underneath the wave. You might have seen a shark in that wave. Does it feel like it's going to crush you sometimes? Sometimes it does. But I know that you guys are all doing well to manage the change because you do that every day with students, and your programs are feeling that sometimes because we have lots of new things that are impacting our students in our field, and we can do it together and we can ride that wave together. I want to start, and we're going to see him a few times. Let's reflect on the year. I was here last year. We were in the middle of reprocuring every service in adult education and literacy in the state of Texas. And I've got a little bit more gray hair. Not much of it fell out, but we survived. And you did wonderfully in that transition. We managed the transition well and with relative steadiness. This was the biggest program transition of the 83rd legislative session. Congratulate yourself, because that's something we all had to do together. And it was tough. There's no doubt about it. But we did such a good job that the Texas legislature this last session saw to it, and they actually commented on the success of our transition, but they saw to it to transfer the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services to the Commission. So that now within the Workforce Commission, we have our Workforce Development Mission, our TANF mission, our Food Stamps Employment and Training mission, our Child Care mission, our Adult Education and Literacy mission, and our mission now to serve persons with disabilities that are looking for work and career development. That is an awesome asset for us to leverage, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So congratulations. We got career pathways happening across the state. When I stood here last year, that was a faint notion. Now we have thousands of students enrolled in career pathways programs with training at employer work sites. We're going to talk about some of those today. We're scaling a new professional development system to our partners at Texas A&M University and getting services and training out, not only through them, but now through Literacy Texas and the $250,000 investment in professional development for the nonprofit sector. We're reaching new customer groups and new models, and best of all, the leadership has faith in our progress. This is what it looked like in my office this time last year. There's an unidentified TWC Adult Education and Literacy staff member. Where I have a few staff members here, raise your hands. They live to survive. Ann Savino, John Stevenson, Elena Madrid is here. And tomorrow we have a brand new staff member that'll be joining us, Veronica Moore. And she has her first day today, orientation. And tomorrow I said, come to a conference and learn what we do in adult education and literacy. So I'm really looking forward to it. But that's what it looked like, and we did it successfully, and I want to thank you for your patience and everything that went into it. And we're running smooth, and we're running strong. We're surviving and thriving, and I've got 3 things to talk to you about in broad strokes. We're in a new era. We're being compelled to transform. Students need us more than ever, and we need to be solution providers beyond just reading, writing, English language, and math. We need to be that focal point that students come to provide a wide variety of resources. And you do that already. Many of you are doing that in a masterful way. And honestly, I only know what I know based on things that I learned from you. So we're in a new era. It impacts education, workforce, education across the realm, from pre-K up to universities. There's big transformative and sometimes disruptive innovation happening because we have a whole new world to navigate within, and you know that. Priorities are changing rapidly, and we have to realign how we lead as educators, both as tutors, as classroom teachers, as coordinators, as directors, and as stakeholders that support those programs. There he is again. So preparing for change. What do we think of when we hear that word? How do we respond? Some of us resist. Some of us fear change, right? Some of us run from change. And then I know there's a lot of you out there that take it in stride, right? Because you work with adult learners and you touch the lives of individuals sometimes going through significant change. So you're buoyant, you're resilient when it comes to change. And you take it in stride, and that's what we do. That's what we're defined as in many ways. Let's talk about the factors that are driving change in Texas. Well, the good thing is there's a lot of interest in adult education and literacy. Because our communities, our state is becoming more and more undereducated. And the workforce and the employment demands and the global economy is demanding more and more out of workers. That's just the facts, and y'all know it. You look at high school dropout rates, you look at high school attainment rates, you look at college attainment rates, you look at third grade reading. Everything is struggling. And elected officials and educators and stakeholders are coming together in new and invigorating ways, I think, to respond. The demand for increased collaboration is everywhere. Working in silos is a distant idea that is no longer one that has any traction. We have shifting student demands. Our student populations are changing. Are we changing? We have new educational delivery models, particularly the infusion of technology and student comfort using technology that's introducing exciting new avenues for us to get learning to students at a time and a place and in a manner that suits their needs. And we got changes in a federal law that funds a majority of the programs in the state. And I want to outline some of those today. Well, students want a variety of things, and you know this, you work with them every day. But overall, they want greater clarity and focus on their journey. And that's something that is incumbent upon us to provide. They want programs that address their pressing life objectives. When they come to your programs, something has happened that compelled them to take time out of their lives to come back to education at the age of 35 or 45 or 62 or 19. They want high quality, flexible, engaging learning opportunities. We need to deliver that. They want transparent communication on their progress and the process. We can provide that. We manage our own little bureaucracies, and we need to be transparent with students. No one likes to go through a process and not know what's happening. When I think of a process, I always think of going to the doctor's office and how I would feel if my doctor said, "You need a test." I said, "Okay." I'm in a real vulnerable space when he says that to me, right? You need a test, and I get the test, and I'm thinking, what's up? How did it go? And he says, well, I don't know. We don't share that information with you. How would I feel? And then I go home, and I'm worried, and I don't know what's going on, and he says, so show up over here and go to an appointment and see this person. They know they're going to be your next step. And I'm kind of shuttled around and nervous, right? You would never tolerate that in a healthcare setting. But that's what sometimes happens in education. We give students tests. We don't tell them what it means or how it translates to what their goals are. We refer them to a class. We refer them to another program, perhaps. And they're unclear why. It happens. But it causes attrition. It causes students to stop out because they've made a big risk to come to us. And if they don't see within 3 or 4 days something that responds to that reason, we lose them. And if you look at the research and the data, we lose students in a great number in the first 10 to 20 hours of their engagement. And I think it's because we're not transparent about what's happening and where they are. They know they're underskilled. That's why they came to us. We need to talk to them honestly as adults about what's going on, what their options are. People respond well to options, right? Think about that one. Transparency. Access to student support. Our students come to us with a wide variety of needs. Many of you are developing robust networks of ancillary organizations that support student success in different ways. You provide that strong kernel of education that's needed to be successful in any facet of life almost. But students have other pressing needs, and that collaborative component is critical for us to provide. And students want all of us to be guides to their careers. It's not somebody else's job, it's everybody's job in this room. Our communities want more accountability. They entrust resources to us, funding, grants, and we need to make sure we're being good stewards of those funds and using them to the best of our abilities. And you guys do that wonderfully. We need models that respond to the needs of communities, employers, taxpayers, and modern life. Modern world is changing. Are we changing? Education's slow to change. It just always is because it's a very complex, multifaceted sector. And to change to the rapidly changing climate of the workforce and of student needs takes nimbleness. We need to be responsive and transformative. We need all of us to work very well together in doing this. And the communities, they want to contribute to what we do. People all around us are saying, how can I help? What can I do? And we need to take the time it takes to make that happen and listen well and find out what other organizations in our communities can contribute to the needs of our adult learners. So what it boils down to is the public expects something different and more from us. Technology is changing our world and our students. Education for education's sake is a diminishing model. Students are customers. They will vote with their feet if they don't see something that's addressing the driving demands that drove them to us in the first place. And we must work very diligently, and I have been saying this for a year now, to attract the non-consumer of our services who stands greatly to benefit from them. There are millions of individuals in this state that are underskilled. You know that. We've been saying that for a year. How can we attract them to our programs? They have constraints. We have models built around those constraints. If students need to come to school at odd hours, you guys do that. If they need to come at a location near their house, by golly, you do that. If they need to do something via technology, you do that. We need to do more and more about how we pull in those non-consumers. And I've got more to share about that in a minute. He's back. We got a new law. It's going to challenge us. And it's supporting this environment. So I'm going to give you guys, I saw a lot of new hands in the room, do a little reflection on the new law and how it compares to the old law. I think of it in terms of neighbors. Think of a neighbor you have or that you've had in the past. In the Workforce Investment Act of the past, it was kind of like two neighbors living next door to each other. You had the workforce neighbors, you had the adult education and literacy neighbors, you had the vocational rehabilitation neighbors. And you could work together. You could have a barbecue and invite everybody over and work together. Or you could build a fence and say, they don't need to work together. We're doing fine. We can operate in a silo. And sometimes we built big fences or shrubs like this one. And we groomed them well to protect our turf. And that happened in the past. I haven't seen that in years. But y'all know that. Y'all have been around. And there's still lingering notions of that. And that was something we could survive in the Workforce Investment Act, and we could do. And we could survive and thrive, actually. We didn't have to collaborate. Some of us built a nice gateway, and we could go in and out when we needed to, but we still had our little silo there, and we kept us comfortable. We often would look in at the other one and say, "What's going on over there?" And they'd look in and say, "What's going on over there in adult education and literacy?" We were always curious. We peep over the hedge and look. Sometimes we didn't like what we saw. We had our fence there, but we didn't like what we saw. And sometimes, very reluctantly, we did collaborate. Right? We've all been there. I've lived through it. You've lived through it. That was the Workforce Investment Act. We could do that. We could survive that way. There were some of us that did work well together, of course, and we found great partnerships. And some of you in the room, I know, taught me a thing or two about how to do that. Well, we got a new law called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I love that name. And it's going to have us working very closely together. Not like neighbors in separate houses, but cohabitants. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to do as a macro system. Shared local planning. There's not going to be the adult education and literacy plan that Anson submits to the Department of Education and the workforce plan that my colleagues submit to the Department of Labor. It's going to be one plan and one local plan that you'll contribute to, not as an optional partner. They won't be able to finish it without you. Probably the greatest and biggest adventure is that there'll be shared accountability. What you do and the performance you have is shared with your workforce partners and your vocational rehabilitation partners. And the measures are going to be the same. When we say something is a literacy gain, it's going to be the same on the labor side of things too. Before, they looked kind of the same, but they really weren't. And that allowed us to survive in our separate fiefdoms. Integrated programs are everywhere, and we'll talk about some of them. That gets me excited. Now, instead of feeling like we have to do it all, now we won't be able to do it all unless we have our partners contributing completely up to the hilt. And we'll have those leveraged opportunities. That might sound scary, but there's a lot in here that's the same, and that's comforting. And that shows that Congress, that couldn't agree on anything almost, but could pass this law after over a decade. They finally agreed on something and passed this law. But they retained so many of the strong missions of adult education and literacy. And then they added things that sometimes we were doing and just didn't tell anybody because we knew we needed to do those things to meet our mission for students. So we're still teaching and learning. We're still helping parents be family members and full partners in the educational development of their children, family literacy. We're still helping folks complete high school. But our purpose has some new things. Transitions to post-secondary education, to training, to employment. It's now not some nice thing that happens if we do a good job. It's expected. It's what we need to be building into our models. It's what we need to be preparing our students and our workforce for, our teachers. And there's a very strong focus on immigrants and English language learners. We do that every day. We live in Texas. That's the majority of our student population. But in the Workforce Investment Act, in the old law, there really wasn't a lot of focus on that. It was allowable, but there wasn't a lot of guidance and latitude. And now, for English language learners, we see, I would tell you, and you will see within 3 minutes of this discussion, what I'm talking about when I say big changes for ESL. What else changes? Well, some big things that signal where things are going, I think are worth mentioning. The eligible provider who can get these federal funds is expanded to include employers. Right now it's libraries, school districts, colleges, nonprofits, public housing units, faith-based organizations, and then they added employers in partnership with one of those organizations. That's Congress really saying we care about the health and the growth of the workforce, because you guys know you work with workers every day that are your students that are underemployed, have languished in jobs for years, and want a promotion to put better food on the table, to put more food on the table, to pay the rent, to not work 3 jobs, but to work 2 or 1. So now employers are included because some employers employ thousands of underskilled individuals and can provide a great service to those workers by having literacy classes on site. There's new requirements for me to spend our discretionary money on specific things to support the programs in the state. Workforce boards are now going to be very involved in approving local funding applications for money. When you apply for grants in the future, the Workforce Board will be very involved in that. There's 3 new allowable activities. I'm going to talk about those in just a second, and I mentioned the accountability system and the transformations there, and I'm going to outline some of the big ones that I think are well worth mentioning. You might be wondering, when does all this happen? Well, look at the bottom of the slide. It says, not today, but soon. The law is enacted, but a lot of these provisions will roll out over the next year. So let's talk about some of the new activities, because this is what we've been working on. And in the process, as you guys want to know, this is the mechanics of the bureaucracy, but it's good for you to know. So the law got passed in the summer. And then in that process, the Departments of Labor and Education do what they call rulemaking. They say, here's the law, and this is how we propose to implement it, the regulations, what you can do, how it's going to look. And those regulations were published earlier this year as a draft. And anybody in the public could comment on those regulations and say, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like the way you're doing that. I would recommend changing it this way. And it's our public input to make sure that our federal partners get it as right as they can. And the Workforce Commission was one of the few organizations in the country that commented on all 2,000 pages of the regulations. And we spent a huge amount of time with a starry and very talented group of individuals to make very healthy comments. And we engaged you in that process back to the federal agencies. And so we commented on the accountability system greatly, and the Adult Education and Literacy Act, and all the other provisions and acts of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. All of that input, you can go online and read what all the states commented on. Organizations, adult literacy organizations made comments, local providers made comments. That's all online for public reviewing. But the agencies now have to consolidate those comments, make edits to the regulations, and we'll be publishing the final regulations, they say in January, which to me, I can't imagine being able to do that and what that process looks like, but it's a monumental effort. And then we will have the driving instructions on what we need to do to implement the law. So there are things to come. The accountability system was one of the vaguest areas and the one that we provided the most input on. So that's an important one for us, because that is what we do every day to make sure we're accountable for the funding and counting student success appropriately. But let's talk about the exciting new things that we can do. One of them is called workforce preparation activities. Again, you see this focus on workforce, career development for adult learners. Many of you did this already on the side. Let me help you with your resume. Let's do some job interview skills. Let's help you with critical thinking. Well, now that's a bona fide activity. Under the Workforce Investment Act, our old law, it was reading, writing, math, English language. And that was it. And anything else we did sometimes, because we knew we needed to help students. But we were always like, is that authorized? Can we do that? And sometimes we turned another eye because we wanted to meet student success. I did that when I taught. Now, Congress listened. They knew that was happening. They said, let's make that an activity you can do in adult education. That's going to really help. It's going to help create new types of classes, new types of services, and make us feel good and be able to fund that. Probably one of the biggest ones that we're excited about is the introduction and the stamp of approval for integrated education and training. That model that many of you are attempting to implement or implementing very well, where training, workforce training, welding, AC mechanic, healthcare training is integrated with adult education and literacy to help accelerate students into the workforce at a higher level for higher wages quicker. The IBEST model, it's known as in many places. Accelerate Texas is what we call it in Texas. So workforce training is something we're going to be in the game of now. That's not somebody else's job. That's something we'll be doing. And that warms my heart because I've worked with hundreds of adult learners, and I know that they come to us, they need reading, writing, math, English language, but they need hard skills too to get that better way to provide for their families and for their communities. Who does EL Civics in this room? Few people? That's about 30 people. English literacy and civics education has been something that's been around since around 2001. It's getting a huge facelift. And this is Congress, I think, responding to the fact that the immigrant population is the highest growing population in the country at a steeper rate. They're producing more children and will be the future workforce. And you hear it every day. It's transforming every asset of our life. And so Congress said, we better make sure we have a program that adequately addresses this growing population's need. And we're going to look at some statistics in a minute about that. So EL Civics has traditionally been civics, education, how to be a good American in English language, right? Well, now it's got to also include training to help immigrants that worked hard to come to America to learn the American way through civics, to learn English, and to get the skills they need to not be stuck in low-wage jobs, but to work and excel in the workforce and be providers to the tax base of Texas and the United States and to build our communities. That's a big change for us, and one that I'm very excited to work with you on. ESL is changing. ESL as we think of it is changing. Now it's called English Language Acquisition. I've got a $20 bill that says it'll take a generation for us to learn the new term, right? I get asked 10 times a week, do we call it ELA now or ESL? And I'm still saying, just say ESL because I'm not ready to launch that one yet and confuse everyone because it's going to take a long time to get that in our blood. But that's okay. But it is changing. Under the Workforce Investment Act, under our old law, it was reading, writing, speaking, communication skills in English, and that was good enough. Well, now, in the statute, in the new purpose for ESL or ELA, English Language Acquisition, it's reading, writing, speaking, and communication, plus completing high school and going to college or training, or going to work or getting a better job. So it's ESL plus other objectives. Learning English better for what? Because if you look at the statistics, you can stay in ESL for years, but your wages don't go up. You don't help your family much more when it comes to income. You learn more English, and that's a good thing. But it's connecting it to something that's going to have vibrancy to help families grow and communities to develop. That's the new expectation. That one keeps me up at night sometimes because that's our biggest program. About 60% of our students are in ESL. And I know those teachers and I know that curriculum. And it's got a long way to go to get there. But you're going to hear me for the next 3 years talk about how we can prepare that workforce. Those teachers to deliver that mission in partnership with other organizations. I'm not here saying every ESL teacher needs to learn how to teach heating, air conditioning, ventilation, and welding and nursing assistant. You got to find other folks to work with in your community. I'm not telling you every ESL teacher has to be a job developer to place students in employment. It's about collaboration, and we're going to talk about that. So why did they make this change for ESL? Well, look at the numbers. Think of it in Texas. I've been doing this slide for 10 years, and it's still happening. If you look at students that are participating in colleges and workforce training and in the workforce, you see the populations for which adult education and literacy was built, Anglo, African American, declining. 30, 40 years ago, our systems were built for that population. Our community colleges were built for a white, Anglo, high school graduate. And that's not who's in them now in a growth way. It's the Hispanic population. But when you look at that Hispanic population and how well they do in the continuum, it's a challenge of great magnitude. This is a cohort of 8th graders. The Houston Endowment did this study. Y'all have seen this probably. They followed 8th graders by different ethnicities, and they saw how many of them were enrolling in any kind of training, not college only, cosmetology classes, you name it. And then how many are actually getting credential. If that's our growth population, and I mean high growth population, and they're not completing any kind of credential, what does that mean about our communities, about the tax base, about the receipt of public assistance, food stamps? It's dismal. 11% of 8th grade Hispanics will earn any type of education credential. That's chilling. And y'all know that. You do this every day. You'll work with this population. But we have got to connect them to something beyond literacy. If our state's fastest growing population is not entering college or training and not completing, they will remain in poverty. And it's going to hurt our economy, and we will suffer. Demographers have been saying this for 20 years. If you hear Steve Murdoch or anyone like that, this is not a new story. That book where I got that graph was from 2003, the New Texas Challenge. 2003, he's telling us the New Texas Challenge. The good thing is we got a law that's going to support it. And we got a commissioner, and you got a state director that is all behind it and will support you in meeting that mission. Thank you. Now look who does our literacy reports. The Dallas Federal Reserve. They're worried about this. Speaking English is perhaps the most important factor in supporting career development for immigrant populations. That's the bankers talking. They're worried about it. Our businesses are worried about it. Y'all are the solution providers. ESL, it's what we do. Problem solved? No, not yet. We've got to get folks into training in college. And this is why. You don't see wages, like I said earlier, unless you get more skilled training. About 1 year of training. This is the research that IBEST was built on. This is historically what's good enough, and we can't settle for that. We've got to do something different. The accountability model's different. We don't know much about it in the new law, but we do know the GED or the high school equivalency measure is very different. In the old days, getting a GED was good enough, but now in the new law, and this is the direct language, it's GED plus. The old law, GED equals state performance. Now it's get a high school equivalency, whether it's the GED or another credential this state might adopt. That's not a viable method anymore. It drives us to collaboration. It's the high school equivalency plus employment or training to meet that performance. Just like the ELA story. We've got to build the collaborations to get there. Is it a challenge? I don't think so for the high school equivalency, because most students are getting their GED right now to go to work or to get a better job or to go to college. So it's not about student demand. It's about what you need to be thinking of as a director to do to build those programs and those collaborations. And as an instructor or tutor, what to do to support those transitions. It's about partnerships. You're over here. And there's a whole slew of people wanting to contribute and help out there. And you're working with many of them. We need to work with all of them. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what the collaboration will get us. Who's collaborating well already? Raise your hand. Let's hear it for them. Look around. If you don't have your hand up, you need to go talk to one of those people and find out what they're doing. Congratulations, you're awesome in your collaboration journey. It can be hard though. It's like sharing an apartment with somebody. You got to learn the rules. Sometimes that collaboration is weird and you got to get used to it. Can I borrow a cup of sugar? The new neighbor, right? Sometimes we have to learn to be tolerant and understand the culture of who's next door and how we can work well with them. We got to listen well. Rumi, we have a problem. We got to listen to our partners and find out what they need and find win-win solutions. We got to listen really well sometimes, right? And sometimes we have to be cautious. Sometimes it just does not make sense to go into that relationship and collaborate too closely, right? So a little bit of caution is always there. But now we're not living in homes next to each other. We're cohabitating. We're working together. We're collaborating closely. So stop sitting on the fence if you are. I don't think you are. Let's think about next steps. First off, you know it's not your granddad's Buick anymore. We got a new world we're driving in. And that's exciting. We're all responsible, and we have a role in student success and career development. You can't say it's not my job. We're all career developers. We must embrace career pathways. We must help students be informed consumers of higher education services and academically prepare them for success. Your role is critical. It's not business as usual, for sure. We got a vision that our commissioners adopted. We're structured really well right now for what we do, but we've got to restructure to reach new goals. Our new vision to deliver education and workforce and higher education transition outcomes through innovative service delivery, through partnerships for efficiencies and alignments and accountability. It's a good, solid vision for us. We got a draft milestone. This hasn't been adopted yet, but I bet it will. 20,000 students by the year 2020 in career pathways programs. We're going to do that. We must restructure to get there. And some of you are doing that already. And we got to think about our assumptions that we have about what we do. These are from your peers, quotes. If you hear somebody speaking like that, let them know we got a whole new world we're playing in. And we need to rethink things. We need to support our colleagues in this transition. It can be hard. We're letting go of a model, and we're embracing a new one in many ways. And some of y'all have been mavericks and harbingers of this new world, and I thank you for your efforts. But think of student success. I think of Parsu and Lena here. These were students in my program in San Antonio. Fourth level 4 ESL student, Parsu from Nepal, walked the stage with 2,000 other students at the San Antonio College graduation, level 2 certificate in dental assisting. Lena, level 4 ESL, did the same thing. She's got that purple around her neck because she was on the honor roll. Level 4 ESL, medical assisting, level 2 certificate, a very difficult program of study. In the old model, she would have been in ESL for 2 or 3 or 4 years. We said no to that, and we did and transformed what we were doing at Alamo colleges, and some of you are doing that now. Only we, not our students, our institutions, our funding, stand in the way of achieving our potential. We must act responsibly and creatively. We need to think of things differently. Think of reading class. This is a reading class with a medical assisting instructor and a reading instructor. Integrated education and training to help underskilled students learn both at the same time. A math class, applied math, not just a textbook. ESL class, in certified nursing assistant, applied ESL. Patient care is some of the toughest English to learn. You're helping individuals in vulnerable states. It's a good place to teach English. Here's technology. 27 Leander Independent School District custodians learning English on their cell phones. That's awesome. That's what we're going to be doing now. That's now. Down the road in Kyle and Leander. Dropout recovery. They drop out of school. Don't give them the same school they dropped out of. That's why they dropped out. Give them something exciting that meets their pressing goals. Think of different places to do learning. When you're doing the laundry on Saturday morning for 4 hours, it's a good place to learn some English. They got Wi-Fi in there on the east side of San Antonio. Let's get a laptop to that student and get some programming out to them. We got to think about our front door too. How do we present ourselves to our community? I hope it's not like that. But that's how it's in my community. I drove by this sign yesterday morning when I went and got breakfast for my kids. It hasn't changed in 9 months since I've been showing this picture. Somebody knows where that is. Don't look like that. Why would the non-consumer ever darken the door and think you're a career development organization that's there building dreams? Look at how we're doing it in McLennan Community College. Fast track to college. Financial aid help. This is the adult ed flyer. Speak in the language of our constituent so they know what you're trying to deliver. Spanish language, high quality marketing. Here's our first example I got. The Adult Reading Center out there in Pearland. Del Pillow here. Career dreams begin here. Not come learn to read. Career dreams begin here. That brings people in. We need to deliberately and thoughtfully create together a new definition and a new culture for student success. We've got to make sure we're relevant because students will vote with their feet. Students more and more are behaving like customers. The non-consumer that's not coming to our program, they expect something new and different. How responsive is your service? If we don't embrace these enhancements or if we don't act now, we risk losing the confidence of our stakeholders and our students. Students are fitting us in their lives, you know that. How do we work harder to develop and implement services with that perspective in mind? Find a center of gravity. It's not Kansas anymore. You might feel like you're drinking through a garden hose sometimes, or a fire hose, right? It's a lot coming at us, a lot of change. You might feel like me, tired, just plain tired, but persevere. You are. You're here to get reinvigorated at this fantastic conference. Find a center of gravity. You're being pulled in many directions. We've got to work together. Our environment is very different than it was 3 years ago. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Keep the literacy mission strong. We need it. I'm not saying that's gone. That's there. It's got to be because nothing works if we don't have reading, writing, math, English communication skills at the highest level. You don't have career success. You don't have college transition. You don't have communities developing. We've got to keep that mission strong. So my charge is to understand, for you to understand and acknowledge these transformative shifts. Act responsibly and creatively. Take some risks. Fully participate in our system's evolution. Aggressively expand your reach and your impact. Find out who you're not working with in your community and reach out and work with them well. And know that our job, my job, is to support you. Join me with ideas so we can move assertively forward. Thank you, and have a great conference.